Welcome to Cosmic Comics, Games and Collectibles, your zen of geekism. We carry comics old and new, magazines, toys, games like Pokemon, Magic, D&D. Want Godzilla, Ultraman, Star Trek, Ninja Turtles, Funko Pops? You'll find it all here. Shop our Cosmic Sound Room and pick up a record or two. Enjoy our Comic Coffee Lounge with a cup of Sasquatch coffee or a delicious menu item while geeking out over a super cool movie on our big screen. Come by and say hello to Maui. Cosmic Comic, Games and Collectibles. Superman loves us, and so will you.
And good evening. I am RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at CriticalBlast.com, where pop culture gets blasted. And tonight we are going once more into the realm of crowdfunded comics. It has been far too long since I've had this guest on the show. Last time was for the first volume of Only Death Can Save Us. But while it's been a long time since he's been on here, I haven't kept out of touch because I feel like I just know him every day because I watch him on the Indie Vault Sunday Funnies, which if you're not tuned into that, you should definitely be subscribed to the Indie Vault channel and catch that weekly show with Randy Zimmerman and the usual gaggle of comics professionals sitting around talking about comics and other fun things on a Sunday morning. I am, of course, talking about Mr. Russ Leach, the creator behind Only Death Can Save Us. Russ, how are you tonight, sir?
Fine, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
And do I have it right that you are a distant relative of Mr. Archibald Leach, whom we know better as Cary Grant?
No, it's not. I don't think I am, although it's possible. I am related to Jack Hawkins, who was an actor from the 50s, who was quite popular at the time, and I believe he was the cousin of my grandmother. So there you go.
Oh, I love genealogy stories. I don't know why. My ex-wife got into the whole ancestry thing. So we had our trees, and she'd play with it with her family, and then I'd get in there and like, well, let me figure mine up. I got all the way up to Adam. I'm like, you know what? I'm done. And you, I don't know. You get to an Irish king, which I realize is just a guy who owned a hill with a built into the side of it. but they at least kept a lore of who all their parents were.
I do have a book of leeches, and that's not the leeches that stick on you. That's a family book that I got, and there is a coat of arms. We were a knight at one point, so that's quite bonkers.
You got some property somewhere. You should
somewhere.
You should prevail upon the Queen to find out.
Yeah, I think Jack Hawkins probably sold it.
We have Chris Fisk in the show. Hello,
Chris.
Good to have you here, sir. So wow, this is the second book in Only Death Can Save Us. Now, this isn't a floppy.
No,
you serialize it later into floppies.
Yes,
but this is a fairly big book. What kind of graphic novel page-wise are we looking at with this?
Right. Okay. So the first book was 60 pages of story with additional content. This book is 66 pages of story plus a 7-page story about war, one of the horsemen, and another 35 or so pages of lore. So basically, you've got these additional tales that are scripted and written as single page comic book pages, and they're the records of the Eternal Realms, and they're kind of like a watcher, a Marvel watcher access to the lore that sits behind the stories that are being told in the main part of the book.
All right, and for those who are not familiar with the Only Death Can Save Us book series, it's a literal death. There is a cosmic and metaphysical problem with the universe, and the only one who can fix this is the literal darn near Terry Pratchett death.
Yes, yeah, he turns up fighting the good fight. I wanted to create an environment, story where there would be a fairly recognizable character. I was looking for a kind of a pantheon of gods thing. I love Thor, Fantastic Four, all that kind of cosmic stuff. I love Galactus stories, the stuff with the Eternals, all that. That just absolutely died for that stuff. And I wanted to create that kind of feel, that kind of vibe. So I felt like I maybe should look into mythology and what have you, but death is everywhere. The guy is ubiquitous. He's with every mythology.
Yeah, we've all got one in our every pantheon.
But I wanted to make him the good guy. But at the same time, I wanted him to be slightly removed, so that I could inject the human story of him and Chrissy kind of, creating a friendship, and him becoming more engaged with souls, as it were, rather than just next. And that kind of worked out. Rick produced a fantastic script. I produced a script and Rick went through it. Rick Hoskin, and he adjusted the dialogue. It really worked really well after he'd finished with it. Came up with some minor plot amends, and so this time round we're doing kind of like a writer's room with it, and he's a lot more involved in the story writing process. But we kind of got to that core of D as the superhero, even giving him a nickname, and his the cosmic angle versus the human angle. So
do you address anywhere in the stories how he has time to do this? Because he's death. He's a busy guy. He's got to show up somewhere about every 6.5 seconds.
D is he actually has to show up more than that because there are alien worlds. So D effectively logs the final words of each soul as they pass through. Occasionally he would be sent, and we haven't seen this yet, but it will be referred to. He occasionally will go on specific missions to help a particular soul pass, but most of the time he sits and listens to the final story and lets the soul effectively get it off its chest, if it were. Just like I ran out into the road to save my cat, and suddenly I was here. It can be mundane, or it can be war stories. It could be anything, and it's his job to just allow them to do that and log it and let them move through to whatever they as a soul choose to do next. So it could be nirvana, it could be another life, or anything. But in the first book, when he had to go firefight, he effectively put one of his minions in charge, sat her on the chair and said, right, listen to all these people's stories. I'm off. I got stuff to do.
Okay, so you got to fill in.
Yeah, he got to fill in, and there is a support network for Death.
Death Incorporated.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I suppose that time flows a little bit differently outside the realm. He's in a different environment time-wise. So actually, because of that, because there is no time outside of our 3D existence, there's no such thing as time. So actually, he gets people turn up in different orders. So, for instance, in the first book, there was a Roman soldier turned up
and then some alien turned up, and then a lady from somewhere in the world that had chased her cat into the road. So you're never quite sure what you're going to get in the lineup, and therein lies some randomness and some opportunity for a little bit of comedy.
So when he leaves that realm, though, for I'm assuming the physical realm to handle this problem, what time is it? Is it now? Is it some point in the future?
The first book I would suggest is the ever-present now of any sci-fi related environment. So you might look at the X-Files, and when we were watching it was the 90s, and of course it was 90s in the X-Files, but you could kind of watch it now and still think, well, maybe it's now. There is this ubiquitous now.
Yeah.
But he kind of has to move into the three-dimensional area. The next book, I think I can give this away. It's set 5 years later, as far as Chrissy is concerned, as far as the human world is concerned, the 3D world. And there's been an interim where you're not quite sure what's happened, and that's explained.
Okay, so I'm assuming then that this is not a carryover from the previous adventure, but a brand new one where, you saved us before. Guess what? We need you again.
Yeah. Well, there is an arc to the 3 books. The arc is a little bit more cosmic, a little bit bigger, and it's kicked off in the first book. This second book is maybe a little bit more bombastic, a bit more fun. It's got some weirdness in it, but there's still some issues that cosmic issues that they have to deal with, and the Horde is still around in one form or another. So there's some mopping up to do before they continue into the third book of the arc.
And I might as well bring the picture up here, at least, or the webpage at least. And there, of course, is Death, with big strapping chest and the knuckles going across, and that kind of answers the question I was going to ask you next, which is, Death is this traditionally always a skull-faced character, and of course there are all these other skull-faced characters in comics. There's Ghost Rider, there's Mr. Bones. How did you go about designing your Death, which it's a skull? There's not a lot you can do with that, and make it uniquely yours and identifiable as this is Russ Leach's Death.
Well, that's the key, isn't it? To try and make it as original as possible, even though it's an existing character. Like you say, it's used quite a lot. As I was saying earlier, the Pantheon of the Gods thing, I wanted to give it this kind of Thor, Olympus, Asgardian kind of vibe. So I didn't want him to be super high tech. So that and the fact that when he battles the Horde, it's very much like spears and blades and clubs and stuff. The reason for that is that because he and also the environment that he's in is effectively so intrinsically part of the universe, the creation of the universe. Ray guns don't really make a difference. Missiles wouldn't make a difference. It's all down to the empowerment, what's going on inside each entity. So I wanted to give him that kind of almost sort of not barbarian, but more sort of an older god kind of, like I say, like a Pantheon of the Gods kind of feel. Then his skull itself, in my imagination, is completely coincidental to the fact that it looks like a human skull. Absolutely coincidental. It's just the way that he's made. And he is kind of like, we might consider him, and I'll let this one out now, we might consider him kind of biotechnical almost. He's not a robot. He's not created in that way. He's been brought into existence by the first ones and the spawn of the first ones, which is the Supreme, who is effectively God for our universe. But there's all kinds of aspects to him that are kind of they're not normal. Then they're not part of our reality. So the fact that he has kind of almost a bio technical aspect to him, and the skull itself is not a skull. It's just the way that it comes over. So there's like there's a lot of aspects to the lore in what I'm doing, whereby ancient myths and legends have been misconstrued over a huge amount of time, over the eons, and part of that is death. So maybe as some people, have near-death experiences, they might see him and bring back his image with them, and that's kind of permeated into mythology. But he's not actually a skull at all.
Okay. So with it not being a skull, then you have less of a challenge getting expressiveness out of his face, because it's a face. It's just a skull to some people.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of it is. I imagined it to be sort of to be hard, but not bone-like. And that you can see the two lines that run over the top of his cranium. They're those two lines, and actually at the end of the first book, where he's where there's the transformation, you can actually see his face is lit up with almost like circuitry, and that's like a little indication of there's something else going on here.
All right. Well,
so all those things kind of built into the way that I drew the character, and how that was how that came to fruition. So just by having kind of like a unique take on the way that he's put together helped create the look.
It's interesting that you say that he's got a little bit of a tech inside of him, or as part of him, because the name of the second book is, of course, Techstone.
Yes.
So,
yes.
That sounds like the two are going to be related in some way.
There is a relationship between that. This other stone is part of the cosmic mystery that's alluded to in the elevator pitch, and it has something to do with the foe that he's fighting against, but it also has there's an aspect to it that actually would end up coming up in books 4, 5, and 6. So it's got a forecast, as it were. It's looking even further down the road rather than books 1, 2, and 3. There's something else coming up in 4, 5, 6, which Rick and I have already discussed where we want it to go.
It's going to be a big series. I know this has absolutely nothing to do with the series, but I just have these hecklers in the back of my head all the time, Russ, that see things and like, hey, and all I can think of now is that foe, holding the Techstone and saying, I was lucky to get this. That stupid Mad Titan collected the first 6, but boy, I got this one.
I was careful not to call them gems.
Yeah, you couldn't call them. Well, weren't they stones in the books though?
They were gems in the books and stones in the films, I think. I thought they were gems, but
I can't.
I may be wrong.
It doesn't say anywhere on here.
There's only so many words I can use.
This is true. They were lapidaries. Or,
yes. But the cosmic aspects of this don't base themselves around the stones. The stones are byproducts. So it's not the same as the stones from the MCU.
You've got an interesting method of doing your stretch goals on this. I know I'm jumping way down the path here, but I've read ahead. Because you're doing it by backers rather than dollars, which is unique. Because we need 200 backers, folks. By the way, to hit the first stretch goal, which We don't know what they are, but it's going to involve chibi versions of our
Yeah.
characters in some fashion. We're halfway there and a squidgen.
Yeah. I don't, I didn't want it to sound sort of like presumptuous that I would get those, but I got 270 in the first campaign. Obviously, you don't expect everybody to come back, but it felt like a reasonable target to go for 200, and then say, right, okay, at 225 or at 250, however it works out, I'm going to start adding in the stretch goals.
Where do you recall where you were in the first campaign when you crossed the 200 mark?
No, the first campaign went to 180 when I funded, but I went up to 270 after in demand.
Okay, so you funded earlier on this one, so people are picking higher tier goals. And one of them, of course, is the fact that a lot of people didn't get book one, so they can catch up and get it for $48. You can get 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's 200 pages of material.
Now these are soft cover books, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because I know the mock-up image makes it look like it's a little bit of a hardcover.
Yeah, that's just the mock-up. Here we go. This is it. So this.
Oh, let me give you the big screen. I'm looking off to the side here, and I've lost my mouse. There we go.
So this is a matte cover, 250, I think. So it's nice and thick, and the inside pages are uncoated, so they've got a bit of a newsprint feel to them. But the colours are beautiful on them. It's the format is very much similar to the way Marvel used to do their one-shot graphic novels in the 90s, and I really like that. So I did that for the first book, and everybody seemed to enjoy it. So I'm going to do exactly the same for the second book.
Yeah, keep doing what works.
Yeah.
I noticed now, of course, the first book was Keystone. Do you have all 6 stones lined up for the book series? I mean, that twice as a pattern, as far as I'm concerned.
No. The Keystone, like I say, has reference. Will be referenced as far as the second arc of the 4, 5, 6. It's a very important part of that. But the third book probably won't have a stone in its title. No.
Well, if you did get the first book, folks, you can get the second book here for the standard price you would expect for an Indiegogo, $25 for 66 pages. Probably be more than that because
it's 100 pages. Yeah.
Oh, it's 100 pages. Well,
it's 100 pages. It's 66 pages of story, but there's there's backup stories, and they're all comic book pages. They're not like behind the scenes stuff or anything like that. It's all it's all content. Yeah.
That's what I like. I like content. I flip past the, if there's 6 pages there that are how to draw a character, I'm like, okay, pencils, more pencils, more pencils. Ooh, darker pencils. Now some inks. I'm not going to draw your character.
No, that's fair enough.
I saw a how to draw. I forget what character it was. Let's say it was like Todd McFarlane's Spawn. It was like how to draw Spawn, and it was like done in 4 steps. It's like first you draw the little egg shape, and then you cross hatch it, and then you draw 5 little egg shapes, and it's like on step 3, and then step 4 was like fully done Spawn. I was like,
there it is. Yeah,
that's how it is to me. Even if I had step by step, I would. It's a magic trick from that last one to the next to the last one.
No, it's not for everybody. Horses for courses.
And I have a good friend who's a really good artist. He's done coloring books for Disney. He now does cereal boxes for a grocery store, a grocery chain. He does the generic characters. But he always would stand up in our Toastmasters meetings and say, anybody can do what I do. And we're like, no, it's just study and practice. No.
No, my dad could draw Huckleberry Hound, and he said that's the only thing he could ever draw.
I could draw Charlie Brown. That was
there you go. One thing. Everyone's got one thing.
We've all got one. So when did you know that you were When was it noticed that your art was better than other people's art? There's a point as a child where like you're just drawing and doodling, but somebody's going to say you're really good.
Yeah, but very early on, 3 years old, 4 years old. That's when my mum and dad noticed it, and then as soon as I got to school, it was other artists do this. You stand out. It's just like if somebody's really good at maths or football or whatever, you stand out from the crowd. So at that point in time, yeah. So right the way through my schooling, yeah.
Did they start then with trying to encourage you, or they're like, oh, he's going to be an accountant who can draw really well?
My mum and dad just encouraged me to do whatever I wanted to do, which was really cool. Obviously, my art teacher thought it was great, but my computer science teacher just wanted me to program. So
yes,
it's all again. It's just they push their own subjects. So I was put in early for exams that I should have taken 2 years later and got them, and then went off to art college.
Freed up a lot of time.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, but while I was at art college, my illustration teacher told me I shouldn't bother because I wasn't good enough. So
All right. Well, that's a challenge. That's a Riri Williams challenge there. Where you're told you won't make it. Now you've got to do it.
Now you've got to do it. Yeah, that's right.
Wrong. From there, as Heroenberg in the chat is saying, you illustrated for Marvel, BBC, Cartoon Network.
Yeah.
How do you illustrate for the Cartoon Network? I mean, as not an animator.
I produced the comic book equivalent of the Ben 10 show for a year for a magazine for the UK. So
it was not the Ben 10 Cartoon Network comic book that we would have seen.
No. This was the reboot, the Ben 10 reboot. And I produced the comic strip for that.
That would be difficult to find over here, I'm sure.
Yeah, it wasn't. It didn't get. It didn't go across the water. No. It was good fun though. It obviously nothing like my normal style, but I saw it as a design challenge. I mean, I got really detailed briefs on how to draw the characters. I got design briefs, massive ones actually, brand and stuff. And I made every effort to make the pages look like they came straight out of the show. So that was the challenge. And they were really pleased. I think I did. I think I hit the target. It worked well. But kids don't read as much as they used to.
Oh.
And so the magazine stopped. But
adults don't read that much either anymore.
No, unfortunately, no.
Because it's all right here in front of us on this screen.
Exactly. Yeah, but people are losing. They're losing the art. That's why comics. I personally think that comic book, sequential art, is the best medium to tell any story. And the reason for that is because it's not passive. You're using your imagination, but you're being guided by a storyteller, a visual storyteller, as well as the scripter. And there's things going on in between, in the gutters, in between each panel, and it's an interactive ride. And you don't get that from film, and you don't get that same thing from books. I just think it's the best way of telling stories. It's been around since we were living in caves. That's what cave art is. It's just the first comic books.
Yeah, I had people I used to work with one of my jobs who knew I was into comics. Like, why not just watch the movie? And I was like, well, let me tell you what Scott McCloud says about this, blah blah. Because I'd been reading, understanding comics, and Scott really does explain it really well. That but first of all, this is a medium that doesn't do or that does what no other medium does, which is that it's got text and it's got pictures working together at the same story. And both of those things are processed by opposite sides of your brain. If you're watching a movie, it's like you got your left brain going. If you're reading something, you got your right brain going. Here you're all fired up on all cylinders inside.
Yeah.
He says that's a thought process building tool that nothing else does.
Yeah.
It can be used to, it can be used for teaching because while your brain is really engaged, you should start absorbing stuff. I absorbed stuff. I tell the story how, I was reading before I went to kindergarten off of comics, and I didn't tell anybody because I thought everybody could.
Yeah, I was exactly the same. Yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly the same, and I built up a vocabulary from reading comics. I wouldn't have read Lord of the Rings if I hadn't read Thor. It's like they're an incredible educating tool. They build IQ, they build critical thought simply because, like you say, you're using both sides of the brain and you're interrogating what you're reading. You're not just letting it flow over you. Fantastic medium. That's all I've ever really wanted to do. Although I've had many other jobs in between.
Yeah, I learned everything about antimatter and physics from the Flash. So
Yeah,
like, Flash fact, I got to remember this.
Yeah, that and YouTube videos.
But when you talk about how it engages your imagination as well, this is something else he addresses. He shows like one panel where somebody's coming at somebody with a knife, and then the next panel is outside the house with a lightning bolt and somebody screaming. And he's like, did the guy with the knife stab the woman? Did the guy with the knife trip over the couch and it's him screaming? Who's committing the murder? You are. At this point, it's Schrodinger's murder. It only exists in your head. You made it happen because you put it together. So yeah, wonderful medium. So glad that you and a bunch of other people are into the indie side of it, because we could spend an hour talking about how it's just being used as an IP farm now for what used to be the gold standard for comics.
Yeah, I think I think it's a hard game to be in. It's difficult for larger corporates to make the decisions that they have to make, but at the same time, purely from the art perspective, purely from the love of the medium, I feel it's being let down a lot of the time simply by the process of larger corporates doing what they're doing. A lot of the time, writers seem to want to write for Netflix instead of wanting to write comics. And that's all I want to do. I don't care. I mean, somebody said Only Death Can Save Us is going to be a Saturday morning cartoon. Obviously, I'd jump for joy. But that's not why I'm writing the book. That's not why I'm creating the book. I'm creating the book because I want to create comics.
Yeah,
and that's it. It's an end to means to an end.
I've said this about the bigger companies. I'm not going to narrow them down to a count because it's more than just the two. But we don't have companies that aren't independents. The big companies are no longer run by the Julie Schwartzes or the Stan Lees. The people they're not run by people who love comics.
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly it. And you I don't think you can blame the talent.
No,
there's lots of things you can blame individuals for, but the bottom line is the large corporates are not in the business of making comics. That's not where they make their most of their money. So you can understand why they may make certain decisions about that.
Yeah, you see complaints about it's this artist or it's this writer. I'm like, no, it's the editorial staff. They're not being told no. They're not being given guidance.
Yes, exactly.
So you got good writers that are making bad decisions.
Yeah, and that's that means that your sales go down or interest goes down as well. And I think that's why you're seeing such a boom in indie comics at the moment. Is because that's where so much of it's not just about creativity, it's about freedom. It's you're free to actually come up with wacky ideas like I've come up with and just like nail it and do it, and if you can find yourself an audience, then that's brilliant.
So speaking of wacky, we're looking here at the cover for Only Death Can Save Us, second volume, the Tech Stone, and this is nowhere on Earth.
No, it's not. No, that's I can let you in that's Mars in the background, and that is a mixture of the Horde and some rather unfortunate human beings as well, and that's as far as I'm going to go with that. The cover is kind of like a play on the first cover. So the first cover was death somewhere. It could have been in the ancient past, if you know the story of what went on, or it could be a modern view of him, but he's fighting the Horde. And he's fighting the Horde again here, but something's gone on, something's happened, and that's what the story's about.
Yeah,
or
they
a
look like
large part of the
zombies that have been
story.
thrown into mech suits.
There's stuff like that going on, yeah. And like I said, I wanted it to be bonkers.
It definitely is. And wow, just look at this penciled page here. I'm a pencil lover.
Right.
I had Ryan Wynn was on our show, and he offered to do me a head sketch, and I'm like, well, I've been collecting Batgirl pictures almost by accident, but it grew into a hobby.
Right.
I'd love a sketch. So he draws the pencils up of this bust of the Barbara Gordon Batgirl, and he sends me a scan, and I'm like, that is so gorgeous. He said, I'll I think something just crawled on me. Not sure.
Yeah.
I'm on a mountain in Arkansas. It's not beyond the scope of
Right. Yeah.
that something just ran down my neck. But I said, I know you're going to do this on your inking stream. I can't watch because it's just so beautiful and such a soft representation of this face. And then he inks it on the inking stream. I'm like, see, it looks a little bit different now. It's a little bit more angular. He's like, yeah, you noticed that, huh? And he's like, yeah. He's like, after you told me how much you loved the pencils, I put it aside and redrew it so I'd have one to ink.
Nice.
So he's sending me the pencil version.
Lovely.
But I get inking. It does add to the depth and the shading. It fixes a lot of penciling mistakes sometimes. And of course, it was necessary to reproduce the art back in comics early days. I've questioned sometimes, do we still need inking? Because
no, you don't. You don't. But I think it would be more of a job for the colorist to start coloring penciled work. And so I've seen it done as well, but you then have the awkwardness of trying to get everybody to work in a slightly different way if you're using a team. For my part, I wanted this book to have a very distinctive Bronze Age kind of look, so it was always going to get inked. That was just the way of it. But as I move through into maybe other books, other characters and stories, then everything's open to me. I don't mind giving it a go and doing something slightly different.
Yeah, I think the first time I saw colors straight onto pencils, and I can't remember what issue it was, but it was one of the Charles Vess issues of Sandman.
Right.
It was late in the line. This is something else that you're doing here that a lot of comics artist professionals have lost. Not that they've lost it, they weren't taught it or they didn't pick it up. The how to do panels and how to progress through them. I think there's a lot of, the character says this, draw a picture of the character saying this. Okay,
yeah.
The character does this, draw a picture of the character saying this, and not getting that flow across the panels of how the action carries from one step to the other. I mean, you're looking at death, and then you're looking from behind death, and then the perspective just keeps changing through here. So it's more than just a sequential.
Yeah, and there's a reason for it to change. I wanted it to be choppy. I wanted it like there's zooming in, they're kind of in and out of existence in different places, and in different situations. So there's a good reason to change up the angles that you would see them at, so that you can visually interpret that as a change each time. It's visual storytelling, sequential art is the word art is not, it doesn't mean the art, it's the art of sequential storytelling. There's a reason why comics are the way they are, and there are plenty of examples out there of how to produce panels in an interesting way. One of the greatest is a couple of pages from How to Draw the Marvel Way by Stan Lee and John Buscema, and there are some amazing examples in just one page of sequential art, where it shows you how to make just a conversation interesting. it is important. It is a dying art, and I think I'd say, you know, I've said this before. There's nothing wrong with tracing. There is nothing wrong with 3D models. Just don't rely on them, because you should be able to do all this in your head. You should be able to turn the whole scene around in your head, and then find a point and draw from that point. If you're relying on 3D models, if you're relying on tracing, then you're never going to have the flow with your sequential art that really makes it come off, you know, fly off the page.
It's not nearly as dynamic.
No, it's not. It's nowhere near. You lose energy. I mean, every time you do a layer, every time you do something to the page, you lose energy from the original sketch.
Yeah.
So, you know,
when I
you've
was
got to
reading
be careful.
Heroes in Crisis, as I was forcing myself to read Heroes in Crisis, and I still don't know how it ended specifically, because it's the first DC Crisis series story since the original Justice League JSA crossover for Crisis on Earth 1. It's the first one that I noped out of before I was done with it. I couldn't get through it anymore. But the artwork was, I was of two minds of it. I was like, you know, this is really good draftsmanship.
Yes.
But it was not good comic art, because I could tell there's like the characters were standing there like mannequins, and not just, you know, the iconic little 9-panel scene where they're talking, Batgirl and Harley going into action, and she's looking bored, and she has these doll eyes that, you know, they're just staring at nothing, and they look dead, just like, you know, if you were looking at a mannequin of Barbara Gordon, there was no life in them at all. So
no, that does seem to have crept in. Some of that is down to, some of that can be traced back, I think, into the 90s, where there was a lot of art done for the sake of the comic book art instead of telling the story. There's a lot of rose-tinted glasses for the 90s, and don't get me wrong, I loved the 90s. I loved the X-Men, and you know, I like Wildcats. I mean, the stories weren't all that, but the art was gorgeous. So you can trace it back to there, and it is something that happens especially in more corporate comics, I think, in that there is some amazing rendering going on. There's some brilliant draftsmanship, but the energy has been sucked out of the page. I saw a page myself the other day with something very exciting on it. It was like a whole bunch of Iron Man, presumed the sort of, you know, drones, and this character in the middle of the page had pulled one apart and then used the jets on the boot to shoot at the other drones, and it was drawn really well, but like there was no energy, there was no dynamic to it, and it didn't make me want to see the next page, put it that way.
Yeah, I completely get that. You know, very, very few people get how to do it dynamically, how to put the panels together, and how to use that particular the overlay of the text and the art, where you're never really sure if it's the text on top of the art or the art on top of the text. It's constantly shifting. One of the masters at this writes a kids series of all things, Jimmy Gownley, and the man is on level with Alan Moore when it comes to making the medium do the thing that no other medium can, and elevating it beyond just an illustrated script.
Yes.
Because, you know, when you get, you know, something like Amelia Rules is what he wrote, that whole series, and it's on par with Watchmen for making panels and text and pages do what comics can only do. Yeah,
I mean, and Watchmen, it's not that complex.
No,
it's just really well done, and that's what it comes down to. I mean, so for instance, we were looking at that page with the 5 panels coming down, and what I wanted to do is, in the first book, it was very much like the old sort of Kirby Buscema 6-8 page grid from the 60s 70s, and then I'm moving more into sort of Stalin territory, you know, mid 80s with this second book. I wanted to change up So my art is still very similar, but I'm changing up the layouts because I just wanted to have kind of a meta thing going on there. But it really is about, you don't have to use the panel layout to do that. I mean, it's exciting to do that and it makes a nice page, but you can have just what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 panels there. It's an old Thor page. Okay.
Yeah, why don't we get that anymore?
And that's just super exciting. Like everything about that is super exciting. That's because it's just drawn so damn well. And
We're
I mean,
lucky to get
look
3 panels
at
on
this.
page now.
You know, this is superb. And then just the action and the drama and the energy in that panel.
Now let me point out something else there, Russ, while you've got it up there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of action going on here. There's several panels. You're going to be on this page for a while. There's a lot of words, and they're not in the way of the art.
Nope.
It doesn't make the page look weighty with word balloons, but you're going to read that for a while to figure out what's going on. And now it's like, you either get, a Brian Michael Bendis page where there's a novel on one of the pages, or you're getting like, a couple of words, and half of them are really
it's not, but most people don't actually speak like that. It is bizarre. We're kind of, like you say, I think some of it's being missed by the the new creators. They're kind of missing out. I don't know if it's a lack of respect for the old stuff or whether it's just a genuine urge to be modern and to be new. But there are a lot of strips that are missing things. And that's not to say mine isn't missing it. Like, I'm not perfect. I'm going to get things wrong. But my inspiration is the Bronze Age. That's the stuff I grew up reading. I loved it because it was all age. Back then, that's what comics were. They were all ages. Everybody read. There weren't kids comics. Well, there were kids comics, but as far as Marvel was concerned, it was like everybody read these
everybody
comics.
could read it. And everybody could enjoy it.
Exactly.
My 45-year-old father could enjoy the Jonah Hex story just as much as his 10-year-old son could.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I wanted to do. There you go. That's where my inspiration is.
Well, I trace that same thing back to the 90s again. And you talk about this rose-colored glasses effect on the 90s, but I did a mad experiment a few years back, Russ, because I was tracing the cost of comics, and I put the article out, and the casual reader said, "Oh, look, RJ's figured out comic books cost more than they did in the 60s." Yeah, but that's not what I was getting at.
No,
because I have a large Justice League collection. I used that for my base. And I said, here's 12 consecutive issues from the 60s. Would be late 60s. And here's 12 consecutive issues from a point in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. I took 12 from each decade.
Right. And
I counted. I counted the number of stories in each book. And if it was a half of a story and continued the next one, then it was counted as a half. I counted the number of pages of story. I counted the number of panels in the book. And I counted the number of frickin' words in each book. And what I found out is that when all the cover prices are adjusted for inflation, so it's an even playing field, we're still paying a lot more for a lot less. Not just, because the paper quality went up or something. We're getting, we're getting 22-page books that have 22 panels in them that are 1/12 of a story, as opposed to, a 32-page book that had a story and a backup in it with, 100 panels or more.
Yeah, I know. It's this extended type of storytelling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of telling a tale, you're kind of telling something over, 3 or 4 issues that you could tell in the one issue, and then there's repetition going on as well. And that's not the way comics used to be. They, I know we're harkening back to another age, and they'll never be like that again. But the episodic nature of those comics is what made them what they were, and what made the storytelling so enticing.
Well, speaking of the storytelling, because we are trying to tell your story,
Yeah.
even though we're meandering into RJ's little soapbox land now and then, is Techstone okay? First of all, I've got to ask what the hell James T. Kirk is doing in this panel.
Yeah,
I just saw that while I'm talking.
No, he's not there. That's nothing to do with it. I don't know what you're talking about.
He just came back from space, by the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love William Shatner.
That's an amazing story. It's like I barely caught that story. I was like, boy, I would have loved to have been prepping the ship, and I'd have gone over. I would have wanted to go over to the window, looking over one of the wings of the shuttle, and I wanted to put a window cling of a gremlin.
Yeah,
so it looked like it was out there on the wingtip.
Something on the wing. Something on the wing. Did you see the images where they put the four on the front of the actual Fantastic Four? I think it was great.
Yeah, because they were wearing these blue jumpsuits. Like, hello.
Yeah, there are. I do like occasionally to put something fun in. Just. I mean, that's not actually him, is it?
Of course,
just a reference. It's similar. So in the first episode, in the first book, on the double page spread, Chrissy says a line from Billy and Mandy. I don't know if you remember that cartoon, Billy and Mandy. Loved Billy. I absolutely loved Billy and Mandy. Obviously, the Grim Reaper was in that, and she says, "Seriously, don't make him use his kung fu," which is something that Grim said. There's also a reference to Star Trek, where they teleport, which is like in The Voyage Home, where she jumps and hugs him and says, "Surprise." So there's that reference there. There's a couple of other bits and pieces as well. So I do like putting in the odd pop culture reference. I just think they're fun. Hopefully people see them and enjoy them.
And they are fun. Is this story? It looks like they're resting up now. Is this a cover or a pinup or?
This is part of the lore, so that there is text to this. This is part of the Tales of the Eternal Realms.
All right. Is this story complete? I mean, I know it's still part of an ongoing arc, but if somebody were to read this one, they didn't read one, they're starting with two, can they come in understanding it, and can they hit the last page feeling, I got a story? You will definitely understand it more if you read the first book, but you could pick up the second book and just enjoy it. Yeah. It's much like the way that we're trying to do it. It's much like the episodic content of the floppies from the the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. Oh, sure.
Where
but you can pick up Superman 175 and not have to read the first 174.
Exactly. You can pick it up and just enjoy the jaunt that they're on in the second book. Yes.
You do have some prints here for the people who backed early.
That's right. Also for the people that backed the first campaign. So if you back the first campaign, you are on my list, and you will get a Preston Azevedo print, which is beautifully done.
That I think is the first time I've heard anybody do that. I know people have taken the mailing list and added to it, but for returning customers to get something unique, Are you going to carry that forward?
I'd like to do that next time as well. Yeah. So anybody that's that will have done that will have got the second book, the third book, they'll get something.
Well,
something special.
That's just an extra impetus to jump in on this campaign, folks. And if you haven't yet, the link is right below us, right below our heads. There's a link there. And there's even one over in the top of the chat that I pinned before we started talking. Yeah.
And then the Ink Spots print is for the first 200 backers. So if you back the first book, and you turn up within the first 200 for the second book, then you'll get 2 prints for free.
All right. Well, you got to get in there now, folks. I kind of glossed over the tiers, and by glossed over, I mean I talked about the first one. I didn't touch the rest of them. But it's fairly simple, even though there's a bit of length to it. You can get the books. You can get multiple books. You can get books with art prints.
Most of this is art. I try to keep the campaigns simple. It's about the art, it's about the books, not necessarily about a bunch of paraphernalia that comes with it. Don't get me wrong, I've had stuff from other people like cards and bookmarks and postcards, and I did postcards last time actually, and all that kind of stuff. And they're great, they're wonderful, but I do try and keep it very much focused on the art. Once we get up to 200, we'll get the chibis going for the stretch goals, and I think I'm probably going to be doing a set of fridge magnets for those because everybody loved the fridge magnets last time.
Fridge magnets are nice. I've got a lot of stickers. I've got the back of my laptop is covered in stickers. Half the back of my bigger monitor is covered in stickers. Yeah. My Lego building area flat now is covered with stickers, so when my camera's straight down on it and I'm building for streams, there's advertising going on. But in the back of my head, there's always this: you're going to run out of space.
Yeah.
And at some point, you're going to have to buy a new laptop. And all those stickers are going to be gone.
Yes. Yeah, that's the trouble with stickers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas
reusable.
The magnets are reusable.
You get to keep the stickers or the magnets.
There's the magnet of D, which we did for the first campaign.
Very cool. So you went with a circle instead of more of a die cut around it.
And this time round, D will make another appearance, but we've got all 4 horsemen. And 6 a.m. Comics did those. Absolutely beautiful artwork. So I'd really like to get those out to people.
Death is one of the 4 horsemen, as I recall my apocalypse.
Again, there's the 4 horsemen. It's all of these things are plays on ancient mythologies that we've got wrong effectively. The four horsemen are actually the pillars of creation. That's what they're known by elsewhere, and they're the good guys. So there you go.
Okay, yeah, we get everything wrong. I've got a story being worked on, and what a moment for a segue here. I have a story being worked on that's going to be part of our upcoming anthology, The Devil You Know Better, which is the follow-on to The Devil You Know anthology we did 2 years ago. 20 short stories, comedies, fantasies, science fictions, horrors, all about people's encounters with the devil. And the story I'm working on is called The Devil's Algebra, and it's basically him trying to do an interview with a guy saying, look, you keep getting it wrong. And it's all about, yes, I'm the angel of light. I had to come first. Do you ever wonder why I had to come first? Why there was let there be light and then everything followed? He's like, I tried to explain it to Newton, and he said, oh, yes, are not, light and gross bodies interconvertible? Yes. I'm like, oh, seeds planted. He's going to get it right. And then I come back, 100 years later, and you're blowing up Japan. He's like, it's not E equals MC squared. It's M equals C squared over E.
Very good.
The creation formula. You can make mass. It's like, oh. But I'm still working on it.
That's really good. I was actually watching a documentary the other day that was talking about was it something had happened whereby mass had been created from photons. So it was like you say, it was the reverse way round.
There you go. We're just a step and a half away from making it into a chicken dinner on Star Trek.
Yeah. Yum yum. Earl Grey tea hot.
I don't know. Get a couple of light bulbs in here. We can have a big meal. So, is there the delivery date? I'm looking at it here. March 2022.
That's right.
Really not that far away.
No, just around the corner.
What's the schedule looking like? And is it like one a year?
Up until now, it's been one a year. Yeah. Because I have other commitments, but it depends how regular the Arrow Comics version will be, because obviously if I'm producing it, then I'll be wanting to get it out to backers as well. So it's one of those things. It all depends. I'd like to do 2 a year, but you know what it's like.
Now, the Arrow Comics version is serialized version
Yeah.
of this graphic novel. The graphic novel is only available to the Indiegogo backers.
The graphic novel is unique. It has stuff in it that isn't in the serialization. It's also presented in the way that I wanted it to be presented. The second book is written with the serialization in mind, but it doesn't read that way. You don't read through and go, "Oh, I'm at the end of part one." It just it flows right the way through, and of course, it's presented in the way that I have the printing done and what have you. You get the prints, you get also the extra bits and pieces in the book. So it's the VIP version, if you like. It's the main event, and then sorry.
I was going to say some of the original art you're getting is, since you do new covers for the Arrow Comics ones, that original art is some of the tiers that you can get here. You can get
that's right. Yeah, I wanted to have the first 3 issues available, but unfortunately I wasn't able to do that. So I've got issue 1 available, which is also an add-on, and that's been going quite well actually. People have been responding to that, and then probably for book 3 I'll have the other covers available as original art as well.
Yeah, add-ons are they're a great I hate to say it this way, they're a great add-on to these campaign machines here.
Yeah,
because I think in time you've seen campaigns where it's like, I've got 5 different items that you can get here, which means I have to have 5 times 4 is 20, times 3 is 60, times 2 is 120. I've got to have 120 different tiers here so I can mix and match everything to the point where you can get just the one you want.
That's right. Yeah.
I think by the end of next year, these campaigns are going to be, here's the book.
Yeah. Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, I did it pretty much everything there apart from original art, because of the nature of the perk, is available as an add-on.
Yeah.
So you could get the original art and then add everything else onto it.
I think it's gonna be more of an a la carte system, which on one hand I think will make it easier, because I get the book and then everything else. On the other hand, it's going to take a lot of the fun out of it. Now it's just a shopping system. It's like, no, I want to be known that I got in on the. Well, you don't have clever little names for your tiers.
No, I decided against that, because you get halfway down and you start running out of ideas for what to call
you got to have death, then you got to have mega death, and we're gonna throw in metallic bookmarks on this one, so it's death metal.
Yeah, and I didn't want to be too cliche either.
Well, this still is. You're getting a lot of press on this. A lot of people talking. I can't believe that you're not going to get at least 200 backers on this before the 17 days are gone. Still on your first 30, or is this your extension?
This is my first 14 days.
Oh, first. Okay, so
yeah, I started. I don't know quite why it's 14. I think that's probably because of the time differences. I started on the 1st, so 2 days time, Friday I'll have been going for 2 weeks.
Okay.
So it's excellent start.
Doing the second extension on it, or
I'm probably going to do an extension, yes, and then I'll probably go into in demand as well. I really do need just a little bit more than I've got at the moment to cover my costs, because I've got other commitments. I've had to condense the schedule for myself, but I've also had to get other people involved. So Eric Weathers is doing the lettering on this. I have a couple of flatters and some extra inks for the law stuff from Matthew Seaborn. So I've got a team together, which effectively compresses my time. But that does mean that you have to pay them. So I don't get as much out of the total as I did last time. Not that I got a huge amount, but it does mean you can get at least some kind of page rate for what you do. But it's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. You've got to entice people in, get the word out, like great shows like this, and entertain people and get things done on time. So the more books that are done on time, the more people will trust you. So if I can get all 3 books out and get sort of get maybe up to the sort of 300 or 400 people that are interested in the book, then when I go into the second arc, I'm going to have that behind me, and it's just hopefully going to build from there. I'd like to do at some point, if there's enough interest, which I'm hoping there will be, I'd like to do a black and white version of all 3 books together in a compendium.
Oh, nice.
So if I could do an artisan version, I'd like to do that. But obviously those
oversized?
things, oversized, yeah. So, but obviously those things are expensive. So it comes down to whether people want it or not.
Yeah.
Definitely, there are lots of plans for more only death can save us.
You're going to think I do nothing but spreadsheets all the time, but I actually am a database developer for 30 years, so I look at data a lot.
Yeah.
But you talked about getting books out on time and getting trust. I actually did another counting study where I looked at books that did more than one issue of the same title through crowdfunding,
right?
Whether Kickstarter or Indiegogo. And there are books out there like Miskatonic High, which I like to reference back to. They get a book out every 3 months.
Right.
They're up to issue 13.
Wow.
And what I've noticed is that the more books you get out on a timely manner, or on a consistent schedule, your backers go up.
Yeah.
With each book, it may not be a spike, but you're getting a few more each time, and it's. And the ones that were like really, really late, they were going the other direction.
Yeah. Well, that's it, because and it's not a surprise. People give you their money. If you're late, it's one that life happens. Okay, and as backers, all of us, because I'm a backer as well, I back other people's projects, and I appreciate that it's difficult because I've done it myself. But being a couple of months late on something and given a completely valid reason, like life happens, you're prepared to go with that. But if it's too long to wait for things, people start to lose trust, and even worse, they lose interest. And that's what you don't want to do. I'm absolutely locked into certain schedules, especially with Arrow. So the book will be done, and it will be going to print at the end of February, and it will be going out end of March to backers.
Excellent. Looking forward to it. Russ, thank you so much for staying up late. I know it's got to be near bedtime.
It's time to go to sleep. I'm an old man.
I hear you. Thank you so much for coming on the show and bringing Only Death Can Save Us here.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you.
Folks in the chat, appreciate you being here. We don't have a show without you. So
thank you.
Again, can't tell you to hit the like button. If you don't like me, you don't like me. But if you'll hit the share and put Russ's work out in front of more eyeballs, your friends and family, let them see this. That would be really appreciated. Get them in here, get them backing this. If you're watching the replay, the link is right down there. Hit it, throw some money at this book. And as always, while you were here, we just hope you had a blast. Good night.